I'm going to read it. Uh, Alice in Wonderland. This is chapter 8. The Queen's Croquet Ground. Here we go. A large rose tree stood near the entrance of the garden. The roses growing on it were white. There were 3 gardeners at it, busily painting them red. Alice thought that this was a very curious thing. When she went nearer to watch them, and just as she came up to them, she heard one of them say, "Look out not, 5, and go splashing to paint over me like that." "I couldn't help it," said 5, in a sulky tone. 7 jogged my elbow. On which 7 looked up and said, "That's right, 5. I always lay the blame on others." "You'd better not talk," said 5. "I heard the Queen say on yesterday that you deserve to be headed." "What for?" said one who had spoken first. "That's not of your business, too," said 7. "Yeah, it is his business," said 5, "and I'll tell him." It was to bring the cook chewed roots inside of onions. 7 flung down his brush and had just begun, well, about the unjust things, when his eyes chanced to fall from Alice as she stood watching them, and he checked himself suddenly. The others looked round. Alternately, all of them bowed low. "You tell me," said Alice a little timidly, "why you're painting those roses?" 5 and 7 said nothing, but looked at two beginner boys. "Why, the fact is, you see, miss, and this is all to have been a red rose tree, and we put white ones in by mistake, and if the King was to point it out, we should all have our heads cut off, you know. And so you see, Mrs. we are doing our best. She comes at this moment, 5, who had been anxiously looking across the garden, called out, "The King! The King!" And the 3 gardeners instantly threw themselves flat up on their faces. There was the sound of many footsteps, and Alice looked round to see the Queen. Brothers came, 10 soldiers, carrying clubs. These were all shaped like the 3 gardeners, the bone and prep, and with their hands and feet at the corners, like the 10 courtiers. They were ornamented all over with the diamond, and worked 2 and 2, and the soldiers did. And after these came the royal children. There were 10 of them, and the little dears that came jumping merrily along hand in hand in couples. They were all ornamented with the hearts. Next came the guests, the most kings and queens, and among them Alice recognized a white rabbit. It was talking in a hurried, nervous manner, smiling at everything that was said, and went by without noticing her. Then followed this maid of hearts, carrying the king's crown on a crimson velvet cushion. And last of all, this grand procession came to the king and the queen of hearts. Alice was rather doubtful whether she ought not to go down on her face like the 3 gardeners, but she could not remember ever having heard of such a rule at procession. And besides, the world made use of the procession, so the people had all to write down stuff on their face so that they couldn't see it. So she stood still where she was and waited. When the procession came up to Alice, they all stopped and looked at her. The King said severely, "Who is this?" She said to the knave of heart, who only bowed and smiled in reply. "It," said the King, tossing her head as impatiently. Turning to Alice, she went on, "What's your name, child?" "My name is Alice, so please your Majesty," said Alice, very politely, but she added to herself, "Why, they are only a bag of cards at all. I needn't be afraid of them." "And who are these?" said the King, pointing to the 3 gardeners that were lying around the rose tree. "Well, do you see that they were lying on their faces, and the pattern on their backs was the same as the rest of the pack?" She could not tell whether they were gardeners or soldiers or courtiers, all 3 of her own children. "How should I know?" said Alice, surprised at her own courage and not being so mind. The queen turned crimson with fury, and after glanced at her form like the wild beast, screamed out with his head off. Nonsense, said Alice. Very louder and sadder, and the queen was silent. The king laid his hand upon her arms and tenderly said, "Consider, my dear, she is only a child." The queen turned angrily away from him, said to her, "Turn her over. Never do so. Be careful with one foot." "Get up," said the king in a shrill, loud voice, and the three gardeners instantly jumped up and began by the king, the queen, the royal children, and everybody else. "Leave off then," screamed the king. "Do you make me giddy?" And then, turning to the rose tree, she went on, "What have you been doing here?" "Made to flee, your majesty," said the two very humble fronts, going down on one knee as he spoke. "We're trying." "I see," said the king, who had meanwhile been examining and the rose up to what they had. And the procession moved on. Three of the soldiers remaining behind to execute the unfortunate gardeners who ran to Alice to protect him. "You shouldn't be headed," said Alice, and she put them into a large forest, but as drew near, the three soldiers wandered about for a minute or two looking for them, and then quietly marched off after the others. "They had off," shouted the king. "They had gone, if they please, your majesty." The soldier shouted in reply. "That's right," shouted the king. "Can you play croquet?" The soldier was silent and looked at Alice. "The question was of interest meant for her." "Yes," shouted Alice. And then roared the king, and Alice joined the procession, wondering very much as to what would happen next. "It is a very fine day," said a timid voice at her side. She was walking by the white rabbit, who was peeping naturally into her face. "Well," said Alice. "So where is the Duchess?" "Hush, hush," said the rabbit in a low, hurried tone. He looked anxiously over his shoulder as he spoke, and then raised himself up on tiptoe, but put his mouth close to her ear, and the voice whispered, and she sang the sentence of execution. "Oh," said Alice. "Did you say so? What a pity?" The rabbit asked. "No, I didn't," said Alice. "I don't think it's all a pity." I said, "So what for?" She boxed the queen's ears. The rabbit began. Alice gave a little scream of laughter. "Hush!" the rabbit whispered in a frightened tone. "The queen will hear you." "You see," she came right away, and the queen said, "Get your places," shouted the queen in a voice of thunder, and the people began running about in all directions, tumbling out against each other. However, they got settled down in a minute or two, and the game began. Alice thought that she had never seen such a curious croquet ground in her life. It was all witches and fowls. The balls were live hedgehogs and live flamingos, and the soldiers had to double themselves up and to stand on their hands and feet and make the arcs. The chief difficulty Alice found at first was in managing her flamingo. She succeeded in getting his body tucked away comfortably enough under her arms and with his legs hanging down, but generally just as she had got his neck nicely straightened out, and was going to give the hedgehog a blow with his head. He would twist himself around and look up in her face with such a puzzled expression she could not help bursting out laughing when she had got his head down and was going to speak, and again it was very provoking to find that the hedgehog had unrolled itself and was in the act of crawling away. Besides all this, there were general ritual supports in the waist wherever she wanted to send the hedgehog to, and the trouble of the soldiers were always getting up and walking off the other part of the ground. Alice soon came to the conclusion that it was a very difficult game indeed. The players all fled at once, without waiting for turns, quarreling otherwise, fighting for the hedgehogs. In a very short time the queen was in a furious passion, and went stamping about and shouting out with his head, or off with her head, about once in a minute. Alice began to feel very uneasy, sure that she had not as yet had any dispute with the queen, but she knew that it might happen any time, any minute, and then, thought she, What is become of me? They were dreadfully fond of the beheading to people's heroes, the great wonder, unless there is anyone left alive. She was looking about for some way of escape, to was wondering whether she could get away without being seen. When she noticed a curious appearance in the air, it put her very much at first, but after watching it a minute or two, she made it out to be a green, and she said to herself, "It's a treasure cat. Now I shall have somebody to talk to." "How are you getting on?" said the cat, and as she ran the words on mouth enough for it to speak with. Alice waited till the eyes appeared, and then nodded. "It is no use speaking to," she thought. "The seers have gone, and at least one of them's in 11 minutes. The whole had appeared, and then I was to put down her flamingos and began to account of the game, to feeling very red. She had someone to listen to her. The cat seemed to think that they were enough of it now in solitude. No more of the affair. I don't think they'd play at all." "Perry," Alice began in rather uncomplaining tone, "and they all quarrel so dreadfully one can't hear oneself speak. They don't seem to have any rules in particular, at least if they're nobody attends to them, and you've no idea how confusing it is. All the things in being alive. So for instance, there's the goats go through next to walking about at the other end of the ground, and I should have Croquet the Queen's hatcher just now, so that only ran away to where it was mine comings." "How do you like the Queen?" said the cat in a low voice. "Not at all," said Alice, and she said extremely just then she noticed that the Queen was close behind her, listening, so she went on, likely to win, and that this hardly was wise in finishing the game. The King smiled and passed on. "Oh, who are you talking to?" said the King, going up to Alice, and looking at the cat's head with great curiosity. "It's a friend of mine, a treacherous cat," and said Alice, "Allow me to introduce it. I don't like the looks at all," I said the King. "However, I may kiss my hand if it likes. I'd rather not," the cat remarked. "Don't be impertinent," said the King, "and don't look at me like that." He got behind Alice as he spoke. The cat may look at the King, said Alice. "I have read that in some book. I don't remember where. Well, it must be removed." The King very decidedly. He called the Queen, who was fasting at the moment. "My dear, I wish you would have this cat removed." The King had only one way of settling all difficulty, great or small. "Up with his head," she said, without even looking around. "I'll patch the executioners myself," said the King eagerly, and he hurried off. Alice thought she might really go back, see how the game was going on, as she heard the King's voice in the distance, screaming with passion. She had already heard her sentenced the three of the players to be excused for having misused their turn, and she did not like to look at things at all. The game was in such confusion that she never knew whether it was her turn or not, so she ran in search of her hedgehog. The hedgehog was engaged in fight with another hedgehog, so which seemed to Alice an excellent opportunity for croqueting one of them with the other. The only difficulty was that her flamingo was gone across to the other side of the garden, where Alice could see it trying in a helpless sort of the way to fly up into a tree. By the time she had caught the flamingos and brought it back, the fight was over, and both hedgehogs were out of sight, but it doesn't matter much, so Alice said all the axes are gone from the side of the ground, so she tucked it away on her arm and might not escape again, and back to Polly's remote conversation with her friend. When she got back to the Cheshire Cat, she was surprised to find quite a large crowd collected around it. There was a dispute going on between the executioner, the King, and the Queen, who were all talking at once, while all the rest was quite silent and looked very uncomfortable. The moment Alice appeared, she was appealed by all three to settle the question. They repeated their argument to her, though they all spoke at once. She found it very hard indeed to make out exactly what they said. The executioner's argument was that you couldn't cut off her head unless there was a body to cut it off from, but he had never had to such a thing before. He wasn't going to begin at his time arrived. The King's argument was that anything that had a head could be behaved, that you won't talk nonsense, The king's argument was that if something wasn't done about in less than no time, they should everybody executed all around. It was this last remark that had made the whole party look so grave and anxious. Alice could think of nothing else to say, but it belongs to the duchess. You'd better ask her about it. She's in prison, the king said to the executioners. Fetch her here. And the executioner went off like an arrow. The cat had began fading away the moment he was gone. By the time that he had come back with the duchess, it had entirely disappeared. So the king and the executioners ran wildly up and down looking for it, and while the rest of the party went back to the king. Interesting. Croquet